So I think when it comes to feminism, something that a lot of feminists fight for is abortion rights for women. So I think I'd like to touch on that for a little bit. So a good jumping off point for each of you, what is each of your basic stance on abortion? We'll have you guys go first, then we'll have Michael respond.
Yeah, I have very mixed feelings and thoughts when it comes to abortion. I am generally speaking pro-choice. Do I think abortion at any stage is moral? No, not necessarily. However, I do have strong reservations about the government being able to dictate when exactly, or like just deciding like, oh, like let's not have any pro-choice, pro-life all the way. I have like very strong reservations of the government being able to dictate a law to that nature. So I have a mixed bag right now. Do you believe in contraception?
I believe it exists, but I would strongly discourage it.
Even for married couples who want to like child plan?
Yeah, I think couples should be open to life.
Even though there's
I think married couples should be open to life.
Even though there's like an overwhelming amount of data that suggests that contraception lowers like abortion rates, basically, right? If a person never gets pregnant.
Yeah, I think people should have more babies, and once they conceive the babies, they should also not murder the babies. But I don't.
Wait, so you think married couples should just every time they have sex should get pregnant, or should be aiming towards getting pregnant?
You know, believe it or not, it usually doesn't work quite like that. But I think they should have more kids. Yeah, totally. And there are also, by the way, there are. Again, it's morally controversial, but there are modes of a more natural process that would be able to quite accurately time a woman's
until we're
cycle.
at the point where we're getting rid of abortion. Then are you then in favor of contraception?
No, well,
lives?
I also reject the premise that you've just made, which is that contraception reduces abortion rates. I think there's a very easy way to cherry pick those data, because you can say, well, in this very small subset of data where we give condoms to college kids or whatever, they have lower abortion rates. But broadly speaking, over the past 60 years, we've had a proliferation of contraception, and we've had a proliferation of abortion. The rates have spiked, and they've lowered it sometimes, but they've remained fairly high. And the reason is more fundamental than statistics, which is that we have a mentality now that sex can come without consequences. And so condoms can be very effective, and whatever like women put inside themselves, and that can be very effective too. But sometimes it's not. And by accepting the mentality that sterile sex is a right, it then implies a right to kill the baby, so you don't actually have to face the consequences when it happens.
I think I pushed back on the idea that like people were not having sex prior to contraception, because
I never suggested that.
Okay, I thought it was suggested, because when you're saying like, oh no, abortion rates have gone up since contraception, I'm not sure if that's true.
They were having kids before contraception.
And they were also getting abortions before
No, I mean, the other reason why it's, I think, silly to try to separate these two phenomena is they occurred basically at the same time. So you had legal abortion beginning in 1973 with Roe v. Wade, though it had been legalized in other states prior. This was, the 1960s and 1970s, the sexual revolution, when contraception became much, much, much more popular and available, and abortion did at the same time too. So it's simply a fact. As contraception became more popular, the abortion rate went up. Now you might say, well, those are disconnected phenomena. Okay, maybe they are, but they certainly occurred at the same time.
At least to my understanding, and maybe we can even search this up right now, people did have abortions, or did have a high rate of abortion before even like Roe v. Wade. What would happen is that they were like more like back alley abortions, illegal abortions, such abortions that like basically put the mother's life in danger.
No, none of that's true. They were having abortions. It wasn't at a particularly high rate. The rate spiked after Roe v. Wade. And it is true sometimes women died from back alley abortions. There's a fake statistic that went around that was cooked up by the abortion industry, which said that thousands of women a year were dying of abortions just before Roe v. Wade. Dr. Bernard Nathanson, who was the head of NARAL, the Abortion Rights League, admitted they just made that statistic up out of thin air. And we can fact check it, because we have the statistics from the CDC. So the year before Roe v. Wade made abortion legal nationally, do you know how many women died of back alley abortions?
I don't have a specific number from the top of my head.
39 is the number. And do you know how many women died of legal abortions? 24. And so almost the same, but you'd say, well, it's a little bit higher for the illegal abortions, except that if you look at the number of states that had legal abortion versus illegal abortion, if you control for that variability, it comes out to almost exactly the same number. And it was a very, very low number. So, that wouldn't be a recommendation of legal abortion.
To my understanding right now, if we decide to like to take a state or a county where one county has a greater amount of contraceptive access and promotes it more, teaches kids about contraceptive use versus a county that there isn't that necessarily same level of sex education, the one that has the less amount of sex education, contraceptive access would have higher amounts of abortion. Do you dispute that?
The one that has higher, did you say the one that has higher rates of sex education would have higher rates of abortion?
No, the one that has higher rates of sex education and higher rates of like contraceptive use will have less abortions than the one where there's no sex ed. Basically, places that have less sex ed have higher abortions.
Well, it depends. It depends on if we're talking about a community that is strongly discourages contraception and premarital sex and abortion, that would be less likely. If we're talking about a community that has very low rates of religiosity and low rates of getting married, but also low rates of sex education, which is just kind of liberal sexual revolution teaching, then maybe you would have higher rates of abortion there. I don't dispute that at all. I mean, we live in a culture now that is broadly supportive of abortion and of contraception, including religious communities. But if you, to use my own group of religious people, if you look at Catholics compared to the rest of the country, and then if you look at traditional Catholics, guys who like the Latin Mass and smells and bells compared to regular Catholics, the rates of divorce plummet, the rates of abortion plummet, the rates of contraceptive use plummet, the rates of childbirth go through the roof. And so the reason I pick that group out more than the others is they seem to have all of the pieces that I'm talking about here, and whereas others, they might have one but not two, or they might have three, and so there it's much harder to compare.
How do you make people more Catholic?
Well, I'm doing my best, aren't I?
Yeah, you are.
I'm doing my very
but
best.
If it doesn't work, what's your plan B?